Welcome to Demolition Success Secrets, the podcast that's changing the game for demolition businesses everywhere. Ever wondered how a wrecking ball wielding industry can leverage digital marketing to dominate their market? Well, we've got the blueprints, strategies, expert guests, and more to show you how. Stay tuned, because we're about to blast through the barriers of your business.
This is Demolition Success Secrets podcast. Today we are in for a treat, folks. We have Connor Bell out of Austin, Texas. What's going on, Connor?
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
I've
you.
never heard anyone pronounce it that way.
Yeah, hey, Spanish class in 7th and 8th grade, it will do weird things to you. So we're here with you on the Demolition Success Secrets podcast, and tell us just a quick little insight about who you are for the guests, visitors, people listening in for the first time, maybe the millionth time. Connor is an old friend of mine. I do not just have friends on the podcast, I promise. I'm just friendly with a lot of people, and he has some really good insights on really being able to awaken and kind of acknowledge that inner child and how awesome of an industry demolition is to do that. For you demolition dudes or you demolition divas, I'm sure when you were young, you were very interested in knocking stuff down, being a little bit destructive, and now you get to do that day in, day out with your business. So yeah, Connor, introduce yourself, and maybe we can kind of parlay what you focus on into this demolition world.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be here. When I first was asked to be on this podcast, of course, I was like, what value can I bring, like these demo dudes, you know? And when I sat with it, that's what I'm becoming more and more open to, is just because we're all here. Everyone has value. Everyone has a valuable perspective. And it's about integrating all these different ideals together so that we can continue to evolve in all the different industries, and we continue to improve and not just be in our echo chambers, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, I have a massive background in a lot of different industries. I started way back in the healthcare space. I was just like a avid practicing physical therapist assistant, just put in like hard hours working with people, and did a lot of, just like soft tissue stuff, mainly worked with a lot of athletes. That got me to a place of versatility in terms of communication, and how I just was able to relate with different types of people in different walks of life and different demographics, belief systems, creepy old ladies who would like either try to set me up with their granddaughter, or they would be into me or something,
Set them up with themselves.
So that, yeah, that's what they really wanted. But yeah, so there's that unique experience, and again, I developed a lot of skills in communication, in connecting with people, in showing compassion and empathy, of like not just being consumed in my own experience, and knowing that there were there are other perspectives out there. So from that point, evolved into the online marketing and sales world. That was another eye opener. Again, it was just me like leaning into what I feared most, which was sales at the time, and I wanted to conquer that. I just wanted to, like, the whole mentality of like just leaning into it, hitting it head on, and had a great time, had a lot of success, made a lot of money. And again, at different stages of life, I'm sure everyone can relate to this. Like, there's a point where you're just like, okay, this structure that exists now is no longer feasible, or it no longer serves this new person that I'm evolving into, or this new way that I want to express. And so there's a time where you are like, okay, we got to demolish this whole thing that we built.
Hey, he fit the word in. All right, love
the
it.
word in.
Let's keep rocking. That's good.
There comes a point where let's say I built like this building, and I built this building, all the ins and outs, like the plumbing and the electricity, and I got it running, and people are able to obviously go in this thing, like look at it as a hotel or something. They come and they have a good experience, has a casino, whatever novelties are in there,
Mm-hmm.
and it had my big shiny name on it, right? And this was, and so this is like this is what I built. This is like the identity and the person that I built over time, and I got a lot of recognition for it, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people like love that version of me, and they were just like they they loved just the experience of me and what they were able to find in themselves. So of course I became pretty attached to that thing that I built. And it's in a big way we can do this with businesses and with locations that we grow up, houses, like a lot of materialistic things. But there comes a time sometimes where we are like, okay, does this structure still serve the next thing that I'm excited to experience in this life, to create, whatever? And sometimes you can just modify it, right? You can make modifications, you can make renovations,
Right.
but then there are times where it's just like, no, I'm actually excited to just start a whole new, and make room for something completely fresh.
Mm.
and and then you can have fun, yeah, just doing the demo thing. I'm actually really curious now, breaking down the word. I love like the etymology and stuff and breaking down the word's origin, but I'm curious of what that is for demolition.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you a number of the mechanisms they use because it's funny you're talking, and I think the land is good. Like, you're talking about breaking things down or maybe rebuilding, and there's a difference of renovating versus tearing down to build anew. It's funny because you think the land underneath, like Connor's being, or our audience is obviously owners of demolition companies, they're head estimators, they are contractors, they're there actually in the excavators and stuff. And sometimes they all kind of do all of those things. But the land itself is good. It's, New York City or what have you. Sometimes you can only renovate a building from 1800s so much before, like you're saying, you have to modernize. So it's kind of funny, that dichotomy. And I think that's where it will be interesting with you. I'm kind of thinking people who are contractors, they're in the excavator, right? Which is like just kind of tearing down the building. They are setting up the implosions to, essentially implode the building where it's going to crumble downward, or they're maybe behind the wrecking ball. So those are your contractors. Maybe they're looking to become an estimator, right? So the estimator is more picking up the phone. They are calling relationships. They're trying to sell the deal, so to speak, and then manage the deal so that way the contractors can go do their work. So maybe, Connor, with what you're talking about, the renovations, the land underneath the building, so to speak, being good, like, hey, demolition may be a great industry for you. However, you want to go from being a contractor working hard on your body to being an estimator, which will still work on your body. You're traveling, you're going here and there. You're obviously certain times getting behind the machinery. And then eventually there's the angle of being an owner. So from your wisdom, can you maybe go through that transcendence of being a demolition contractor to the mindset and the understanding to become, let's say, an estimator or become an owner? Can you just kind of touch on those angles?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an evolutionary process. And so whenever I whenever my own clients ask questions like these, it's coming back to, it could be easy to just go to the next thing. I actually had a conversation with a guy who used to be a contractor in the past. I had this conversation yesterday, actually. So this is pretty synchronistic, serendipitous.
That's why you're here.
That's why we're here. But he was just like, oh yeah, it's easy to go to one thing to the next, but in those transitions, you get this lull to where you can ask, okay, like why do I actually want to pursue this next thing? Like what is it that you're truly seeking, out of that? And because again, there could be a simpler way to actually just get what you want, right? Well, like, you know, whether it's more responsibility, more recognition, or again, I guess making it less about, oh, my body hurts and my body is literally just deteriorating and I can't do this anymore. And so this thing allows me to do less of that. So I'm going to do this thing next. I would focus less on just the away from and like what the pain you want to avoid, and get clearer on like what do I actually want to experience on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like? And then what is the role that fits that? You know? So it's I would say this, like, I put things into perspective of archetypes. And if you like to, I like to keep things simple in the beginning. So if you think of an owner holds, I'd say more of like an entrepreneur who's like kind of starting things up, but an owner could hold these three archetypes as well. There's the athlete, right? There's the person who just like is the doer, who just gets things done. I would say a contractor is embodying most of that energy on a day-to-day basis, the athlete energy, right?
Sure.
They're using their physical body and they're doers. They're generators, they're energizers, right? And they get shit done.
Right.
So there's the athlete. And then the next archetype is the nerd, right? So that's the person who loves the numbers, they love the data, they love integrating, they love taking things apart, putting things together.
Probably the estimator. You know, they're really looking at the numbers and trying to come up with a plan, and can they even fulfill it? Are they going to cover their tail and make enough profit versus are they going to lose profit on the job?
Right.
That's kind of what that's reminding me of.
Yeah. So then we're using all these energetic archetypes all the time. It's just like some we're using more than the other, right? So just ask yourself, like, yeah, you've been like the athlete most of the time, and then maybe it's taking a toll on your body. So you're just like, oh, okay, but maybe I'm fascinated by this process, and I want to embody more of the nerd. So an estimator would provide that. And then the third one would be the artist, right? So like, it's the creativity, you know, and that's different for everyone. But I see the artist also as what you mentioned in the beginning, as the child, you know, as the inner child. I think for me, whatever role I'm in, I seek to ask myself, how can I bring all of them into the equation? How can I, like, even if you're still working as a contractor, how can you bring the nerd and the artist or the child like into that experience on a day-to-day basis? You probably already do it, but you can get even more intentional about it. And yeah, so I think like when you have all three of those in one, and I think an owner really embodies all three of those in a big way, and like they have to show up as a good leader, but to also keep people inspired, to keep showing up to work, and to keep like cohesiveness and camaraderie between the teams and all, and things like that. And so I think an owner embodies all three of those. And the last piece that I was going to touch on was, I kind of call it like this, instead of it being this like this dynamic of getting admiration for your hard work, it's more of like, how can you be the dad who brings his son to work day? You know, how can you embody that dynamic every single day? I'm the dad who brings his son to work day, you know? How can you bring that into every day of your work, whatever role you're in, whether it's contractor, whether it's estimator, or whether it's owner? So no matter what role you're playing, you at least get to like you're honoring all of those parts of you.
Right.
And it's very fulfilling no matter what role you're in. It's very fulfilling. It's not like grass is greener on the other side type dynamic, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to become an estimator because I want to get away from this pain, and that looks greener, so I'm going to go do it. And then it ends up being still like it's still difficult, but it's just another type of difficult. It's another type of, another flavor of stress.
Right.
And so you'll encounter that in any role when you're focused on that. So just shifting your focus from the what am I trying to avoid, and then more into what I want to experience, which is just all those archetypes that I just mentioned.
Okay. Awesome. That's helpful. So I think of you as like a Tony Robbins-esque dude these days as you've evolved. There's a lot of wisdom there. NLP and psychology and, various different things which you may perfectly subscribe to, or maybe there's variations, obviously hypnosis, things of that nature. So let me ask you this. Is it okay for these people to want more? Is it okay for them to attempt embodying these next stages? Does Connor approve of that, so to speak? I would assume certain things, but I will let you touch on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer that I always have for people is it's less about the thing and more about the relationship to the thing. So it's okay to like want more. We are creative beings. We're expansive. Like we're here to create cool shit,
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to just like go on an island for a month too and just like do nothing. But that's still like more. You're still experiencing more. No matter what you're doing, you're waking up to a more expansive experience than you had the other day, right? So like we're doing it anyway. Yes, it's okay to want more. It's okay to desire more. But what is fueling that? Like, what is your relationship to that? Is it do I want more so that? And it's also okay to want more and then achieve something and then be seen and admired for it. That's okay too. It's just like some people, they can get very consumed in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it can drive their life and their behavior, and then eventually burn them out. And then they'll take these detours in things that are actually not fully aligned. And then they wonder why they're burnt out and why they're depressed and why they're like dissociating in all these different ways, whether it's like entertainment, drugs, money, social media, whatever it is,
The 12-pack on the demo site.
Go back on the demo site. Yeah.
Every day, day in, day out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Work for long.
Yeah. So what is your relationship with wanting more? Is it, I like, if you just think of it in relation to like a man and a woman, if you see a woman, are you just wanting to, have a fun like fleeting night and then just like not actually connect with the person and not actually enjoy your time with them? You just want to get the climax and then peace out.
Mm.
Like, if that's how you're treating those type of relationships, then how are you treating these job opportunities, your relationship with the job opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Are you just wanting to go and like get a high in this illusion of like, something that's satisfying, and then it all of a sudden you find that it's not, and then you move on to the next thing, and there's just this perpetual search for like chasing the carrot, or chasing a moving target.
Right.
So it's just not getting caught in that, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I talked to a guy the other day. He leads as head estimator out in Texas, ironically.
Mhm.
He does stuff near you, actually, a lot of Houston stuff, but also a lot of Austin stuff. Really interesting, because what he was saying was more or less they're focused on the referrals. They're focused on a long-term business. He talked about price gouging and all that stuff, how they are very far away from that because they've been in the business for a number of generations.
Mhm.
And he and I were kind of laughing about that, going, whether it's the owner, whether it's the estimator, whether it's the contractor, everyone in some way is chasing that one night stand, like you were alluding to.
Mhm.
He had mentioned the contractors in certain instances, they get offered $1 an hour or more somewhere else, but they missed out on obviously the job safety because they come back 3 months later and say, hey man, they let me go or whatever. I wasn't living up to standards. Like, all right, so the one night stand of $1 extra an hour, you now missed on $3 extra an hour and staying where you were in terms of the company, that demo company. In terms of the estimators, I mean, I last podcast we had Dean on from Atlanta, and he was saying people will call him and they'll say, "Oh my God, you picked up the phone." Like so many demo companies don't pick up their phone. Well, that has me thinking that's because they're worried about the one night stands. These companies, these estimators, is they say, "I'm on another job site. It's $1 million bid or it's $1 million deal, whatever. Why would I worry about the $500,000 deal or $50,000 deal?" So again, screwing it up on a one night stand, and the owners, some of you guys know who you are, have not taken the best care, let's say, of my business in the past, where we have made them millions and millions of dollars, and they did not necessarily disclose that the way they should have, because they were again worried about $1 when they should have been more worried about millions of dollars. So we ended up not working with them long term because they were again focused on that quick high, that easy win, that kind of thing. When the bigger thing, like I mentioned, talking with that head estimator out in Texas, he was talking generationally. He was not talking about weekly, monthly, quarterly, what have you. So I'm pretty into that. I have two more quick topics to run through with you. I think this one will be a fun one, the inner child of sorts. Whether it's the contractor boots on the ground, whether it's the estimator, whether it's the owner, talk to me about that cool aspect of the inner child in the demolition business. Do you have any insights or enlightenment on how freaking cool it is as a reminder to these people to be like, hey, I'm doing something really awesome. Yeah, I have to drive 2 hours down the road to get to this bid that I may or may not even get. Um, and they're not going to pay me for gas if I don't get the bid. My boss isn't even going to pay me for gas if I don't get the bid. Talk to me about that childhood aspect in the demolition space of being any of those three roles, like how cool it is. You could probably express it better than I could. Just tearing stuff up, blowing stuff up, wrecking balls, doing really cool stuff that kids would probably be like, my dad's awesome, or my mom is awesome if they're involved in demo.
Yeah, man. I I think it starts with connecting with something that's bigger than yourself. And I know a lot of people say that. I'll give some context to the inner child. If you are at a wedding and maybe you have children, maybe you don't, but the kids are just like either crying or they're throwing a tantrum at the wedding. And you're just telling them to like calm down, calm down, calm down, and they do. And then you're like, okay, you're not gonna do anything else, right? You're gonna be quiet and behave, right? And then so they go off, but then like 5 minutes later, they're causing havoc or they're crying again or they're throwing another tantrum. Kids, they're very present, right? They're not super intellectual, like they're not in their heads a lot. They're not evaluating, they're not in the past or the future. They're not like evaluating these like polarizing thoughts. They're just super present, and all that they want is a good story. They just want a good plot line. So in the analogy of the wedding, giving the kid a role of, hey man, you're a detective or you're a pirate, and I buried I buried the treasure, somewhere in this venue, and here are the clues to go find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, boom, they're like in a storyline. They're like excited. They're playing a cool role. So the same thing applies in whatever role you're playing and whatever game you're playing or whatever you're doing in this contracting role. What is the big picture storyline that you guys are working towards, that this is about? What's something that's so big that you probably aren't even gonna experience. You're probably not even gonna, experience that in this lifetime. But it's this like grand storyline, right? And so when you connect with something like that's bigger than yourself, it makes like the minute, like the day to day, feel like part of it's like one of the adventures in that massive, like macro, big picture quest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you'll be way more present, and then you'll find like the jokes and like the punchlines of, because I feel like whatever your perspective is on like God and universe and stuff, I feel like it's always seeking a punchline. It's always thinking like irony. And if you're present and you're not just focused on like the hustle and like the outcomes and like the grinding to make money and things like that, and you just have more fun, and you'll notice more of those punchlines, and you'll find play in this whole process of like going, like you said, going out, and even if something doesn't happen, the cool thing is if you're open to it, maybe something even better will fall in that moment. But most people, they can be so fixated on the end goal, on the destination, on like an outcome looking a certain way, that they don't leave any room for the magic to happen, and that's the invitation. Like, connect to something bigger, like give the kid a cool storyline to play off of. And it won't feel like this like finite, like empty thing, like, oh fuck, it didn't happen. Well, I'm gonna go try this thing next, and it's, again, you're just constantly chasing a moving target in that case.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm thinking of like a city shaper or a skyline shaper as like a phrase. So, okay, you're a contractor, you're there tearing stuff down. At some points, you may say, hey, I make this amount of money. Meanwhile, the guy who's the estimator is making a fortune. Meanwhile, the estimator is looking at the boss saying that guy's rich, blah, blah, blah. And all of this may be correct and wrong sometimes simultaneously. But you can look at all those people and be like, okay, I'm there doing the grunt work. Well, guess what? You're able to shape the skyline. Like, you're just as much as someone is building the skyscraper, and meanwhile you're tearing it down, so to speak. Well, guess what? You're building room for an even cooler thing, or an even more evolved thing. Like, you're a part of evolution. Like, how cool is that? In one generation, usually evolution takes cycles, and a very long time for something to change based on its environment. You, as the lowly contractor that you thought you were, which you're not, you are now a skyline shaper. You are now an ecosystem changer, and it's for the better. That's really cool. As an estimator, like you had referenced, you may go travel to that point, you may not make that deal, or may not have the impression on the person who's looking over the contract. But guess what? The next day you may land that, and you just landed a job that's a $5 million deal. I don't know about you. A lot of people aren't landing $5 million deals. You may not think that you're making the income that, let's say, a SaaS salesperson is. But also, I don't know a lot of SaaS salespeople who can high five their boss and say, we got a $5 million deal. They're out there, but that's pretty cool. Lastly, for the owner, like, yes, the money is important, sure. But you guys have a really cool, as you talked about earlier, like an artist touch. You are helping all of those people put food on the table. When I talked to Dean recently on the podcast we had, he was saying, hey, I have, almost dozens of people that I, as the head estimator, am putting food on the table of. And I have to keep that in mind, as my owner keeps in mind that he's doing that for them, as well as he's doing it for Dean. So thought that was super cool. I think that is great. Last thing I want to kind of pick your brain on for this episode is just sales. You obviously have a lot of wisdom there. You've transformed from someone who certainly, maybe wasn't naturally the sales guy. You were the body guy when you were doing physical therapy and helping heal people. From a physical perspective, now you're doing physical, emotional, spiritual, all that. How can people from, again, the contractor selling themselves to do the best job they can, keeping the client happy while they're on site, they'll interface with the clients. How does the contractor, how does the owner, how do they all do the best job possible at selling themselves, their teams, and then their clients or their prospects? I don't need you to answer those all separately, but it would be cool just for the demo industry at large. Can you impart maybe any sales psychology or wisdom that's applicable?
Yeah. And it's kind of a continuation of my previous point. And again, I always start macro and then I go to the micro. It's top down, if I'm speaking to owners, again, what is a clear vision and mission, that we're on? Like what's a big picture vision that these people can relate to, and they can, and that speaks to them. And the mission is obviously the vehicle. And so what I've found is when the vision and the mission are not clear, what are we actually selling? If we're selling like commodities, like it's from my experience, it's not as sustainable, right? And it doesn't keep people together and working towards a common goal. So the invitation for owners is definitely like, if there isn't a clear vision on what we're working towards, and like if the vision is big, the vision is nothing that the ego can latch onto, right? The vision is so big that it's just what keeps us on the path, and we're not actually even sure what it actually means, but we're just excited to go on the journey to find out what it actually means. And then the mission is the impact of that journey, right? And so coming down to like a practical sales exchange, if you start with selling someone, like hitting someone with the values of the vision and the mission and the impact, it speaks to the heart first and not the mind. But once you connect to the heart first, that's when you got them. That's when you have loyal customers, loyal team members for life. Right? Because you're building something with meaning, like you're building something meaningful. Instead of this just transactional thing where you're like filling a void, right? So that's the biggest advice that I give from a sales perspective. When I was selling other people's stuff, and I wasn't back in the day when I was selling other people's stuff, and I was training people who were selling other people's stuff, and it was night and day. When someone knew what the vision and the mission that they were plugging into and that they're giving time, energy, and resources into, versus when the owner didn't have that, the retention was shit. The retention was just not there, because they felt like they were pouring into a bucket with a black hole in it, and it should be the dynamic of like, we're rising the tide so all ships can rise together, where it's what you want to create is a closed loop ecosystem that essentially feeds itself. And that starts with anchoring to something bigger than all of you in the whole process of the company. So that's what I see. Otherwise, like things will just like the way that technology and things are going. How can you connect with your people? How can you connect with your customers and your team members in a unique way, instead of because I know this is, again, this industry isn't going anywhere, right? And it's a necessity, it's a need, as we like land isn't going anywhere. Like, these we're like I said, things are evolving and shifting, and where we do business and how we do business and how we facilitate experiences and economics and things like that. But it all comes back to like sustainability comes back to relationship. That's like how can you create a unique relationship with your customers and with your team members, and you'll not only you'll not only stand the test of time, but you'll enjoy it. So you'll love it, you know?
Sweet. Dig it. All right, cool, man. Well, I think that's pretty good for this episode. Is there anything you want to add or let people know how they could reach out to you? Anyone in the demolition industry obviously can gain a lot of insights from Connor, be it the top down, the bottom up. You know, I'm trying to think of like a Yin Yang Twins song, like from the window to the wall, to the wall. You need Connor to help you ball. I don't know. Yeah, how can they get in touch with you? Is there any other last wisdoms you want to impart to the audience?
Yeah, in terms of how you can reach out to me, like I said, if you're looking to just integrate like more of those different archetypes into your life and you don't know how to like logistically do that or create a structure for that, then I'm here to support people. If they have trouble connecting to like a big vision like that, to just enjoy the present moment and the creative process more as you evolve in this industry, then you can reach out to me. And I love just like creating an opportunity for people. It's like it's kind of like I set people up on dates with their vision, and that's how I'm describing it now, so that they can improve the relationship even with their vision. So, but you can reach me at let's launchyourvision.com. That's one, or live your vision, or liveaccelerator.com. That's LYV, not LIV, LYV, accelerator.com.
Cool.
I also have at Connor_LYV for Instagram. And aside from that, that's how you can connect with me. And the last thing I'll drop is, just ask yourself, what makes me feel most alive? What makes me feel most alive? And do more of that.
Boom. All right. Huge. Well, cool. That's awesome. Connor, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Demolition Success Secrets. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, brother.
That's a wrap for this episode of Demolition Success Secrets. Stay tuned and subscribe for more explosive insights from our upcoming episodes. Until then, continue to blow up your demolition business and make the competition rubble in your path.